Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Today on Spotlight, imagine having the ability to help low-income families by growing fresh veggies in and out of season. Plus, we get the DePere City Administrator involved and try to solve the mystery of the pickle jar. And then, Christmas in the 1930s wasn't complete without a trip here. But first, a small business using food waste from the community to help the environment. It's Sunday and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
The biggest source of pollution is residential landscaping, all the lawns, everything that we are putting on, all the fertilizers, all of the mixes to have the greenest grass. That's the biggest irrigated crop in the country. So what I'm doing is pretty extreme. Like, I've killed all my grass and I'm putting all edible landscaping and have my little micro farm. Mushrooms, it's a regenerative micro farm, and the main focus is soil building and building healthy soil so we can grow healthy food. And I do that by coordinating a residential food waste composting service for families in my community. I go once a week to pick up food waste in Rockwood and Parkway School District. Customers will put their bucket of food waste in front of their garage, wherever is convenient, in front of their garage on their front porch, and I pick that up and give them a clean bucket. And if they order any of our tomatoes or arugula, basil, then I deliver the produce in reusable bags that I made out of my kids' t-shirts, like where you cut the sleeves and the neck out and tie the bottoms together. So they just return the bags or glass jars or plastic containers. And I just wash and reuse everything. Then I ferment the food waste in buckets in my garage. It's called bokashi. It's based on Korean natural farming, kind of like kimchi, or like, if you pickle things. So I ferment the food waste in my garage in buckets for several weeks, maybe a couple months, depending on how long it takes. And then after it's fully fermented, then I hot compost it in the duck area over there, or I have I think I have like 70 worm bins in my basement. How I keep everything contained, I just make a little barrier. I have buckets of the bokashi compost. This is what it looks like. There's like this white mold on top. This is food waste that's been fermenting for a couple weeks in the garage, and it gets this white mold on top. I take the wood chips from the pathways and other carbon material, make a big base layer, and then I layer up my browns and greens to all the hot compost. And this is my dishwater. So this is one of the things we do, collect the dishwater inside and use it to water the garden and the compost. Some customers will want the processed compost back, so every spring and fall I will do a compost delivery where they can get their processed compost put in their garden. So I think it's nice to know that your food waste is getting composted, supporting a local small business. It smells better than bokashi. My ultimate goal is to convince people to, number one, stop fertilizing their grass, hopefully remove some grass and put in a pollinator garden, maybe grow some food, and just have conversations about the environment and what we are doing does not just affect us. So I think, we need people to see, like, it's not easy, but, eventually if you put enough effort into it, it'll be something that everyone can enjoy. Hopefully I'm going to sit down and enjoy some wine in here someday.
HEC Films. Explore, inspire, educate, and entertain. HEC Films. Just one of the many facets of award-winning content you'll find at hecmedia.org.
Under the roof of this food distribution warehouse, something out of the ordinary is happening.
We have about 150 heads of leaf lettuce growing, green leaf lettuce. This hydroponics farm can be used indoors and in any season. So we can grow lettuce in winter. Normally you wouldn't be able to get lettuce unless you have some sort of greenhouse, but now we can get lettuce any time of the year.
Operation Food Search, a nonprofit hunger relief organization, is the first food bank in St. Louis to receive the Flex Farms. These indoor systems were a donation from United Healthcare Community Plan and Fork Farms.
We were started as a rescue food bank in 1981 by some local concerned residents who knew there were people who didn't have access to healthy food. Since then, the organization has evolved with more than $35 million worth of food going out into the St. Louis region each year. That translates into more than 200,000 people receiving food through our organization's partners each month here in the region.
The Flex Farms are named Demeter and Ceres after the Greek and Roman goddesses of agriculture. They can yield 25 pounds of produce per month. One farm can serve nearly 2,000 families per year with a harvest of 3,400 plants. Umberger says the Flex Farms don't use any pesticides or herbicides. They're energy efficient and easy to maintain. Operation Food Search primarily serves low-income families. Health officials say it's important for all families to have access to fresh vegetables all year long. Families that do not have adequate access to fresh vegetables are considered food insecure, and officials say fresh vegetables are vital to healthy eating and key to combating chronic disease such as high blood pressure and diabetes. In addition to the Flex Farms, Operation Food Search designed programs dedicated to addressing the importance of a healthy diet.
We have FreshRx Nourishing Healthy Starts and then FreshRx Prescribing Healthy Futures. So FreshRx Nourishing Healthy Starts works with pregnant women up through 60 days postpartum that are experiencing food insecurity. And so it's a food as medicine program that provides a weekly meal kit to the program participant and anyone else in their household. We also have the Prescribing Healthy Futures program, which serves children with diabetes and their families. Working with kids with diabetes is in response to a disproportionately high rate of pediatric diabetes, particularly in low-income areas. So they're doing the majority of their food shopping at corner stores or gas stations that don't have access to fresh produce and vegetables and all of that. Their only food option comes from packaged food and that processed food. They're not getting those nutrients they need. Eventually that can lead to earlier and earlier onsets of diabetes and obesity, kind of all as a symptom of that food insecurity.
Other factors, such as lack of access to nutritious, affordable food and transportation, have an enormous impact on a person's health. Operation Food Search says it is committed to providing nutrition and health information to the community.
We have a responsibility to not only meet that immediate need for families right now, but also to look to the future and how can we make the future better. Every organization that works with families needs to be a part of thinking long-term about how we get to a point where food banks are only needed when people have some sort of crisis that they're going through, that it doesn't become an intergenerational coping strategy just to survive.
But for now, Operation Food Search focuses on the daily nutritional needs of families who are suffering from food insecurity.
I think that this opportunity to have greens grown in-house gives us an opportunity to connect with our families in a way that they know where the food is coming from and they know how it's getting to them.
Later on Spotlight, it's a food pantry for pets that helps thousands of furry friends each year.
In the quiet town of DePere, Missouri, just a few miles from the St. Louis Gateway Arch, there's a crime that's gone unsolved and unchecked for more than 10 years. With seemingly no rhyme nor reason, a jar of pickles randomly appears and disappears alongside one of the busiest roads in the entire city. Having no leads to go on, HEC's investigative team decided it was time to solve the great DePere pickle jar mystery.
better part of a decade and potentially even longer, we've had somebody that's been dropping off a jar of pickles at the overpass of 270 at Manchester Road without any rhyme or reason. To this day, we still don't know who the culprit is or why this is happening.
During that time, the puzzle has only grown in notoriety, making headlines in the Wall Street Journal and gathering a following on Facebook, hosting its own Team Pickle group page with more than 29,000 members.
It's got a huge following at this point, as I understand it. I think people, they find humor in the uniqueness of it, and the fact that it's happening here, which De Pere doesn't get a lot of headlines on anything. So for this to be our story, it's pretty funny in that respect.
Our team did not find this blatant disregard for the law nearly as amusing. So we decided to take matters into our own hands and create some AI-generated sketch artist pictures of the possible pickle perp ourselves.
Doesn't ring a bell.
How about that? A little
Same.
bit more discussion.
Probably more realistic, but no.
But after some prodding, City Administrator Schaefer admitted he does have his theories.
I've long suspected that somebody at the staff level was involved in this or aware of it, but that has not come out yet. Those are just my own suspicions. The act of doing this would involve somebody going out there undetected in a very busy street. Somebody's bound to get noticed doing this. I've been reassured by our Director of Public Safety that that's not happening. So it's nobody amongst our ranks at all. We have no leads.
Having seemingly come to a dead end, we decided to hit the mean streets of De Pere near the pickleball courts to see if we could find someone there with a theory that might crack the case. It did not take long.
I don't know. I would guess it's teenagers and maybe a prank. I don't know. Maybe somewhere along the line people started recognizing it and talking about it. 10 years ago, I don't think it was all that popular. And maybe, though, now it's getting more notoriety because of the pickleball.
It's funny, we have very prominent pickleball facilities right here in the park, and now that we're talking out loud, I wonder if there's sort of some synergy there in the story.
We tried reaching out to several pickleball players for comment, but they refused our request to speak on camera. If you have any leads on who the De Pere pickle perpetrator is, please contact the authorities.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell, president of the Missouri Historical Society in St. Louis, and this is History Spotlight. Christmas in St. Louis in the 1930s wasn't complete without a trip to the department store Sticks, Bear & Fuller. Library assistant Magdalene Link described some of the treats shoppers could find there.
When it first opened in 1892, Sticks, Bear & Fuller department store occupied 815 to 821 Broadway near Morgan. And within a few years, the business was really booming and really took off. And that, coupled with the success of the 1904 World's Fair, kind of led the store owners to deciding that they wanted to expand their business. And so eventually they purchased a lot of land that was a little bit closer to downtown on Washington that was previously occupied by a hotel. So they contacted architects Moran, Russell, and Gardner, and they kind of decided to look at other department stores around the United States and then came up with their own really innovative and a little bit bold and unusual design. There were all sorts of things available in the department store, so everything from a bridal department to clothing and accessories for adults and children. There were photo studios, furniture, housewares, there was a wig and a beauty salon, there were fur and millinery shops, and of course, in the midst of everything, there were several restaurants and dining options. The largest dining options, though, were on the 6th floor. And when it opened, the tea room, as it was known, boasted seating for approximately 750 guests at a given time. During the holiday season, no day of last-minute shopping at Sticks, Bear & Fuller would be complete without a visit to one of the many dining options. And there was a daily special luncheon in almost each of the different establishments. And in 1938, you could purchase one of these daily luncheons for about the cost of $10 to $15 today. On Saturday, December 24th, 1938, hungry Christmas shoppers could purchase kind of special Christmas Day luncheons, which included everything from a roast Ozark turkey, dressing, cranberries, Brussels sprouts, and then a special Christmas salad. You know, the menu also included a large range of soups and appetizers, salads, special plates, sandwiches, beverages, a little bit of anything and everything that hungry shoppers would want. Some of the other luncheon options, though, were a little bit unusual for department store fare, and they included things like braised sweetbreads with mushrooms and things like frog legs with tartar sauce. All sorts of things could be purchased, including a whole range of beverages, including things like a fresh orange egg phosphate, buttermilk, Coca-Cola, and of course, a wide variety of locally made beer, including things from Budweiser, Falstaff, Griesebach, and Alpenbrau. And, you know, Stixbear and Fuller continued to serve downtown for many decades. Ultimately, though, Stixbear and Fuller would open 8 more stores in the metro area and 3 outside of the metro area. And Stixbear and Fuller was eventually, though, sold to Dillard's. And while many of the stores were demolished or significantly remodeled, the downtown location is now home to a number of things, including apartments, businesses, and the National Blues Museum.
Next week on History Spotlight, we explore the complex history of HIV/AIDS in St. Louis over the past 50 years.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
Go to hecmedia.org for the arts and authors,
Completely accidental because I never set out to write a book.
science and history, culture and community,
It's considered to be the oldest organic farm west of the Mississippi.
education, films,
Finding the coin places the site firmly in the 13th century.
what's happening now around St. Louis, and more. See for yourself at hecmedia.org.
Finding a recipe these days is fast and easy. Just hop online and search. But the authors of the 9th edition of Joy of Cooking will tell you their recipes are tried and true.
Just think of it as a very heavily curated and fact-checked internet.
John Becker should know he's the great-grandson of Irma Rombauer, the St. Louis woman who authored and self-published the first edition in 1931. Nearly 60 years later, in 2019, Becker and his wife Megan Scott published the latest edition, adding 600 new recipes after several years of testing.
It was the first cookbook that I ever bought for myself, but I picked it up because I knew it had a reputation for having everything that you would need to know as a cook.
Joy of Cooking has raised a nation of home cooks, over 20 million of us. But when the cookbook made its debut, it was at a time in American history when finding joy was as scarce as finding a job. In the early 1930s, Americans were in the throes of the Great Depression. With no work, people lined up outside soup kitchens, and families struggled to put food on the table. In 1931, at 52 years of age, St. Louis socialite Irma Rombauer was no different. She found herself with no income and little savings after her husband Edgar, a prominent attorney, took his own life the year before. Biographer Ann Mendelsohn writes in Standing Facing the Stove that Rombauer was strong-willed, intelligent, forthright, and artistic. Born to German immigrants in 1877, Rombauer spent most of her life in St. Louis, aside from a few years overseas when her father, Dr. Maximilian von Starkloff, served as a diplomat. Their home still stands at Compton and Longfellow. Mendelsohn also writes that Rombauer is known for being an engaging hostess and was president of the Wednesday Club, a St. Louis social club for women who wanted to gain knowledge and take part in civic projects. Inspired by a successful cookbook published to support a St. Louis children's home, and at the urging of her 2 grown children, Marion and Edgar, Rombauer went to work writing her own version, despite her lack of cooking experience.
Irma grew up with household servants and she had a cook. And so when she found herself in reduced circumstances after her husband's death, I think a lot of it was due to she was kind of approaching the kitchen anew and learning a lot of new things for herself as well.
She gathered recipes from church friends, pals at the Wednesday Club, and her family, testing them all and adding witty comments on not only how to prepare the food, but how to serve it.
This is something great to have like on hand, in case, your neighbor stops by. So it's a lot of that that you can definitely see that hostess and kind of entertaining background.
The result was The Joy of Cooking, a compilation of reliable recipes with a casual culinary chat.
It's the family miracle, for real.
Yes.
That's pretty much how we feel about it.
Her daughter Marion illustrated the cover, a simple drawing of St. Martha, the patron saint of cooking who wielded a mop to fight off the dragon Tarrasque. 5 years after her first edition, Rombauer found a publisher, Bob's Merrill. Together, they introduced Joy of Cooking to the world.
Yeah, that's a really remarkable thing to me, is that she kind of embarked on this career in her midlife, and she had no prior experience as a writer, and she seemed to embrace it with a sense of humor. And I think that's what came across in that early edition especially, and what really endeared her to so many readers is that she really was just a personable individual, and she made you feel like she was in the kitchen with you.
Bonjour, my friends. This is Irma Rombauer.
But one of Rombauer's biggest fans was Julia Child.
The first edition of The Joy of Cooking took me a year to write.
Their relationship was briefly depicted in the Nora Ephron movie Julie and Julia, of which the family is not a fan.
Let's just say that there was something lost in that treatment of Irma. For instance, I don't think that Irma would have been so forthcoming with her husband's suicide.
From Irma to her daughter Marion, to her son Ethan Becker, and from Ethan to his son John and wife Megan, there's been a new edition roughly every decade.
We don't want Joy to just become a museum piece. We don't want it to be irrelevant. We want it to continue to be a helpful cookbook for home cooks. So we tried very much to stay in that spirit when we were revising it.
The 1943 edition gave space for wartime rationing. In 1951, new appliances like blenders and freezers came into the picture and into the book.
So this one is the 1975 edition. So this is the one that sold over 6 million copies, so the most popular one.
Magdalene Link is a researcher at the Missouri Historical Library. She says since so few copies were printed in 1931, that first edition is tough to find.
Is it rare to find signed copies of The Joy of Cooking by Irma Rombauer?
We do have 2 first editions. So one first edition has the original dust jacket on it, and that one is signed by Irma Rombauer, and it's dedicated to Maisie, and Maisie was her husband's secretary. And Maisie helped her with kind of writing early editions of the book and kind of developing some of those early recipes. We also have a first edition that's signed by her daughter Marion, who did the illustrations, and she was the head of, I believe, the art department at John Burroughs School at the time.
Irma Rombauer died in St. Louis in 1962. Her tomb at Bellefontaine Cemetery is often visited by fans. She is memorialized with a star along St. Louis's Walk of Fame in the Del Mar Loop, which Becker and Scott visited in 2011.
Irma is such an illustrious presence, and I think she deserves the star, absolutely, and it was really cool to see. But yeah, it is humbling to think that we're responsible for her legacy in some ways. We take that to heart.
Becker and Scott are already making plans for Joy's 100th anniversary edition in 2031. For now, follow along in their kitchen on Instagram at The Official Joy of Cooking.
St. Louis is known for toasted ravioli, gooey butter cake, and Provel cheese, but there is one holiday favorite that few know was invented here. Ready Whip. St. Louisan Aaron Bunny Lappin started injecting real whipped cream into lined spray cans in the 1940s. His invention created ease and extended shelf life for the post-war society. By 1951, annual sales had topped $7 million. The company he created to make aerosol valves, Clayton Corp, is still in business and now based in Fenton. Open, pour, repeat. It's an activity volunteer Lisa is very familiar with.
It's a workout, that's for sure.
It's bagging day at the Bi-State Pet Food Pantry, a place that helps low-income families take care of their pets.
We are a nonprofit pet food pantry. We're basically just like a people pantry, but for pets. So people come here once a month and they get food for their pets for that entire month.
An idea made into reality thanks to these two ladies who saw a need and decided to do something about it.
If you fall into a situation where you need help, you can't afford pet food, the pantry's here for emergency situations so that you can keep your pet and you don't have to give up your furry friend.
We just kind of took a leap of faith and all these wonderful volunteers caught us.
The food comes from the community.
I can't believe how much food they give away now. We went from giving just a couple of 100 pounds of food away a month to 20,000 pounds of food. You know, it's crazy.
It's a 100% volunteer-run organization.
I am scooping the food into the bags.
I'm getting the air out so that there is no excess room for the food to move around.
My job is to weigh the dog food, seal it up, and then pack it in the crate.
Volunteers work for almost 5 hours on bagging day, all in preparation for next weekend. It's called Distribution Day. The perfectly packed food is lined up inside as the line of animal lovers forms outside.
That's Reese. She's going to be 11 this year.
It's Lexi. She's a bulldog mixed with pit.
This one is BG and that one's Midnight.
That's my cat Tootie, and she's in her cheerleading costume, and it says cheer up on there. Yes, they're my children. I don't have kids, so.
At the front of the line, you'll always find Paul Kelly, a volunteer and food recipient for the past 10 years.
Came as a client and got tired of standing in line and asked if I could volunteer. And son of a gun, they put me back to running the line. That gal, number 3.
Paul is the pantry's biggest fan.
I love dealing with the people out here. You know, we're all equals out here, you know. We all have different needs, you know. They help me with my pets here, and I just like the idea of Bi-State Food Pantry and what it means to the people and how much need there is.
He's in good company. The line is full of grateful pet parents.
I find if you bless other people, then you get blessed back.
So we'll get you 30 pounds of dry. Do you need treats and toys?
If you qualify for the Bi-State Pet Food Pantry, they can also provide vouchers to get your pet a rabies shot and spayed or neutered via Carroll House Quick Fix Pet Clinic. Their Christmas drive is coming up, where every pet gets a nice bed and a fun toy. They are looking for some small cat beds to be donated still.
Where are we going? Right across the street?
The Bi-State Pet Food Pantry helps about 100 families in St. Louis a month.
I just like the feeling of helping people and just get that good feeling when I get home that I did something today.
It's an idea helping the families of furry kids all over town.
It's wonderful. Sure helps out a lot. If it wasn't for them, I don't know what I'd do. I'd probably have to give them up.
An idea now filled with lots of volunteers, and that number is always growing.
Oh my God, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You help us when we're not able to help ourselves. And I hope someday I can volunteer here.
Next week, scientists are gene editing invasive fruit flies to help fight crop damage. Plus, how World AIDS Day showcases an inspiring community. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.